Yeah, I think the question around how are advertisers meant to change with the change to CTV and social is really interesting. For me, when I think about talking to clients about what they need to think about, I really try to level up these kinds of questions to where they're focused and where their challenges are. And those are often in integration across agencies and across their marketing teams. In a lot of ways, clients are facing a ton of fragmentation, and the industry and their own businesses have responded to that fragmentation with more fragmentation. And what we really want to do is bridge those gaps, pull down those silos as best we can, because when you think about CTV and when you think about social, they really don't have the traditional barriers to entry that other brands have faced historically with other media. For example, with CTV, managing frequency isn't just about buying CPMs. It's a premium product where frequency is often very tight. So when you're managing your reach curves, you have to think a little differently about how much exposure you're giving to your audience and how frequently your audience is going to tune out from your creative. That also means you have to be working with your creative agency very tightly so that they're aware of iterations and how many versions you're going to manage to deliver on what you're promising for your audience and for your brand. From a social perspective, I think it's even more interesting because it's all about how you understand your audience. Social algorithms have nothing to do with reach. They have everything to do with attention. So when you're talking to an advertiser and they're saying, well, we should buy this channel or this channel, you're like, yeah, you probably should. But you really have to make sure that you understand the algorithm as it relates to your audience and how to create creative that connects with them. So your media team and your creative team have to be super tightly connected so that when you're developing that work, it's really closely tied to their interests and fandoms that they're a part of within those communities. And so it's just a real call to me to think differently about how the industry and how we serve our clients is sort of like working together today, and really making sure that integration is central to that.
So, Brendon, alongside the twin poles of CTV and social, commerce media, retail media have also exacted their gravitational pull on marketers' plans. Wanted to know, what does the rise of those two areas, retail media and commerce media, mean for brand building?
Yeah. No, and it makes sense. I mean, they're kind of all part of a big change that's happening in the media environment that consumers are sort of being either pulled into or pulling marketers into. And retail media is interesting because it really highlights the importance of brand. It's easy to see that importance when you think about search. Search, historically has lived on Google, but obviously Amazon and other retail platforms are driven a lot by search. And if you're searching for Nike as opposed to running shoes, you're going to win because people are already foreclosing a ton of options when they search for a brand first. So in one sense, the power of brand has never been more important than in a retail media environment. I think from a bigger picture, though, it also sort of highlights the challenge that a lot of marketers face. When there's a possibility of selling your product anywhere, there's going to be a ton of incentives on the marketing and on the business side to sell as much as possible. And what that can do is really force marketers into short-term decisions. So what we can do is really help them see that we're going to simplify their view of the funnel. We're going to simplify their understanding of the customer journey. We're going to focus on two very simple things: demand generation and demand capture. And demand generation is all about building that upstream penetration, building brands, making sure that people have you top of mind. And when we do that well, it means that the efficiency of those powerful new retail media networks can really come to bear for brands. But if we're biased towards that bottom of the funnel focus, we're going to lose penetration. We're going to shrink kind of that overall demand universe. And ultimately, we're going to see impacts that are sort of depressing effectiveness for brands. So it's a really fun space because it really forces brands to stop over-complexifying their marketing and focus on just, all right, do people care about us enough when they're in market? And if not, how do we build our brands and our reputations, our pricing power through brand, such that when they go to search, they're willing to pay more, they're going to look for us first, and ultimately going to win more.
CTV is another area specifically where you get that over-complexifying, if I can say that word. Brendon, how do you see commerce opportunities within CTV environments? Specifically, specifically shoppable and interactive TV? How do you bridge those points?
Those capabilities are fantastic, and I think they're kind of part and parcel to what I was talking about before, where the opportunity is there and the capabilities are growing, and they're only going to get better, right? It's just the start of this journey. I think the challenge for marketers is the temptation to sell as opposed to the temptation to persuade, right? It's going to be so easy to put your product front and center with a price and a buy now button, and I think what clients will face is the risk of saying, all right, well, why aren't we selling as much as we used to? Why aren't we reaching as many people with the right message? It's a focus on selling as opposed to persuading. And so I think the power of CTV is really in building brand, not necessarily selling right now. So it's about finding the right balance between brand building and selling. And so those capabilities are really fun. I think they're super interesting, and I think they reveal a lot about what consumers really do and how they behave today. But it's got to be balanced with the reality that most people aren't shopping for your product right now. And a lot of times it's really about nudging them toward it rather than selling them for it.
Another area of nudging consumers inevitably leads back to the role of AI. Wanted to get your sense, Brendon, of that. Given that AI is top of mind for pretty much everybody across the board today, from strategy, planning, measurement, and optimization, creative ideation, as well as production, is there anything that maybe hasn't been part of the conversation, either within those buckets or outside of those buckets?
It's fun because, there's so much AI conversation that it's hard to know what hasn't been talked about yet. I think the thing I'm most interested in that's been sort of percolating a little bit recently is the question of how agents maybe are very, very effusive and supportive of any point of view for anyone using it. And what that says to me is wow, if you're not just using a transactional AI, if what you're doing is saying, all right, I need some advice on how to make decision A or decision B as a marketer, what you might get is kind of a garbage in, garbage out problem where the way you ask the question, the way you display your biases about what to do will reinforce your biases and maybe not advise you the way a team member would or an agency partner would. And I think that's the most interesting, probably under discussed space in our business. We're really counsel to our clients. We are meant to be kind of outside in thinkers. And if you replace that outside-in thinking with a reinforcement model where all people are getting is what they want to hear, I think you're going to see a lot of marketers make a lot of weak decisions because they're not getting the guidance they need. So I think that kind of personality of AI and the bias that it seems to have to please the users is the thing that's most interesting to me right now.
One more thing about what's interesting to you, maybe another outside-in perspective. Yeah. Are there any particular innovations or trends, particularly at Advertising Week, that you're going to be keeping a close eye on, and why?
Yeah, I've been sort of paying attention to the conversation around dopamine culture a lot, and I think it's a term that was invented or kind of brought to bear about a year ago, and it's really brought to bear around social algorithms and how people are sort of paying attention and behaving in ways that reflect things that they don't really understand about their own biology and what kind of causes them to pay more attention to content, share content, talk about things. And that's something that's part and parcel of what we do. Our job is to understand people and what motivates people. And I'm really interested in how people respond to incentives as a dad, as a marketer. And I think that's the thing I'm most interested in seeing is how in advertising we start to take advantage of that in good ways and not just kind of go to the lowest common denominator.